Dean, we are live now.
Thank you. Director Lewis, your hand is still up, by the way.
I will try and unhand myself. Participants. Oh, Michael. How do I get it down?
It's still up, Director.
How do I get it down, Jeremy?
Oh, just re-click on the hand button.
Re-click on the hand button. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Great. With that, good morning to all attending the RTA's virtual meeting of the Board of Directors. I will call us to order. The Governor's emergency declaration remains in force during the current COVID-19 pandemic, and pursuant to his executive orders declaring a public health emergency and recent amendments to the Open Meetings Act, we will continue to operate under permission to conduct our meetings without physical attendance requirements. As head of the public body, I find it is not prudent or practical to hold an in-person meeting or to have staff or any members of the board at our headquarters during this meeting. Now, let's review the guidelines for the meeting. Keep your audio on mute as much as possible to minimize background noise, which may impair the recording. When you have a question or comment, please raise your virtual hand. The board secretary will call on board members who have raised their hands one at a time. When he calls on you, lower your hand and unmute before speaking. When we get to voting, please raise your hand to make a motion or second. The board secretary will identify who is making the motion and second for our record. After he announces the motion and second, please lower all hands. Any questions at this time? With that said, I will now recite the Pledge of Allegiance. You can all remain on mute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Director Indulcio.
Here.
Director Canty.
Here.
Director Carey.
Here.
Director Colson.
Here.
Director Fuentes.
Here.
Director Gavin.
Here.
Director Gorman.
Here.
Director Groven.
Here.
Director Holt.
Here.
Director Cotel.
Here.
Director Lewis.
Here.
Director Melvin.
Here.
Director Pang.
Here.
Director Ross.
Here.
Director Sager.
Here.
And Chairman Doty.
Present.
16 present, 0 absent, Mr. Chairman.
Great, thank you. And thank you all for your excellent attendance again, especially during this holiday season. Item 3 is the approval of the minutes from the board meeting held on November 18th, 2021. Are there any comments or corrections?
One moment, Mr. Chairman. I see no raised hands at this time. Oh, I'm sorry. Director Cotel, it's down. Or Director Cotel, do you have a comment?
Not motion to approve.
Okay.
Thank you. How about a second?
A second by Director Indulcio.
Great, thank you, David. With that, Jeremy, please, Mr. Secretary, take the roll.
Sure. Director Indulcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gavin.
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven,
Aye.
Director Holt,
Aye.
Director Cotel,
Aye.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Melvin,
Yes.
Director Pang,
Yes.
Director Ross,
Yes.
Director Sager,
Yes.
Chairman Dillard,
Yes,
16 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. That roll call then is approved. Item 4 is next, and that's the public comment segment of the meeting. Have we received any requests from the public to speak today?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we received one request to speak from Bruce Mainzer.
Great. Mr. Mainzer, he's on. Are you not?
Yes, I am on.
Super. Thank you for joining us this morning. And what would you like us to know? And please speak up.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to talk today. My name is Bruce Mainzer, and I am a resident of Highland Park. I am a retired public transportation planner, and I worked for RTA, IDOT, and Metro North Commuter Railroad in the 70s and 80s, a long time ago. I am a member of the Climate Reality Project. RTA board members, as well as CTA and PACE board members, are familiar with the Climate Reality Project, as we have been showing up and advocating for replacing fossil fuel buses for a couple of years now, and we are very pleased that PACE board responded by deciding to end all future diesel bus purchases and declaring that in the 5-year plan, the Waukegan Bus Garage will operate exclusively with only electric buses. Kudos to PACE. But PACE is still programming 88 more compressed natural gas buses, CNG buses, in the 5-year plan. Meanwhile, CTA is ordering another 500 diesel buses in its 5-year plan. It is for this reason I am asking the RTA board once again to deny approval for these buses. Today, it's only a few days after the most devastating tornadoes ever to hit the center of the U.S. One tornado tore a path of destruction more than 200 miles across Kentucky. Climate change is real, and we all need to do something about it. 2 years ago, I was heartbroken after seeing the Australian wildfires, and I decided I could not buy a fossil fuel car any longer. So I bought an electric car. It is one of the best purchases I have ever made, and I am spending thousands of dollars less on gasoline every year. But my contribution to lowering greenhouse gases is tiny compared to what the RTA board can do today. The RTA board is in an envious position because today, unlike most of us, you are in position to make a big contribution to reducing greenhouse gas emissions and stop the ordering of these fossil fuel buses. If you change the 588 fossil fuel buses programmed in this 5-year plan to be instead ordered as electric, that would be equivalent of saving emissions from 8,000 cars annually. A bus lasts 12 years, so this is a massive number. The greenhouse gases from 8,000 cars for 12 years is a big deal. I've heard many on the RTA board ask good questions of the service boards, and some of the time I do not hear exactly straightforward responses to your questions. So let me state this unequivocally. If you had a sense that the technology is ready for electric buses now, you are right. If you sense that each electric bus could save $400,000 in operating costs over a 12-year life of the bus, you are right again. And if you think that there are enough capital funds from federal and state sources to pay the additional $250,000 required to upgrade from a fossil fuel to an electric bus purchase, you would be right again. But PACE still wants to buy 88 more CNG buses to be housed in a garage in Wheeling, for which ground has not even been broken yet for construction. Why? Is it just a matter of it's too much of a headache to change plans from 5 or 10 years ago? There is no need to invest more in the CNG outdated technology. CTA testing of its electric buses has been an enormous success. CTA is ready now to transition to an all-electric fleet, but all it takes is a push by the RTA to force the obvious. Other transit agencies like Baltimore decided that electric bus technology has advanced enough so that their current purchases are only electric buses, no more diesel or CNG buses. I wish I was an RTA board member today, because today the RTA board has the ability to do something significant to address climate change. Oh, many of us have sent contributions to the Red Cross, and we have sent boxes of blankets and coats to the people suffering in Illinois and Kentucky. But what would really make a difference is if someone could do something to mitigate or maybe avoid altogether the next tragic disaster. It can be as simple as adopting a resolution in this capital budget that no funds are to be used for any fossil fuel buses any longer. Pass a resolution. All future buses will be electric. No more fossil fuel buses. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce, very much. Obviously, we have heard the testimony loud and clear on electric buses over the last several months, or even before that. I want to thank you too, Bruce, for your service to the transit riders of our region in the past. One just comment to you and plea to you, as well as everybody else that is pushing the electric buses. One of the things you could do to help us immensely, including making sure that we have the revenues to purchase electric fleets, is to tell people to get back on mass transit and ride it. We need passengers back on board for many reasons, including the revenue that is derived from those riders, which make our path towards all electrification of buses quicker. So, Bruce, when you're out there as one of our former employees, please tell people, if you care about the environment, you should be on it anyway, but get on mass transit. But
Yeah,
your
just to
comments
note,
are
though,
really well taken, Bruce. Thank you.
Okay. Just to note that there are capital funds available that I believe from the state that the RTAs and the service boards have not taken advantage of, and that's the Illinois EPA funds. There are $40 million available to buy electric buses. That could fund 163 more buses right now. No one's taken advantage of that money. There's going to be plenty of money in the federal transit projects. And the other thing is that you have received information from the service boards that are misleading in terms of the cost of an electric bus. Right now in the capital budget that you are approving, PACE estimated the cost of an electric bus to be $1 million a piece. That is not true. The most expensive buses that are operating are close to $850,000, and in PACE's case, a 35-foot bus would be more like $750,000. So which is only $200,000 more than a CNG bus. And I'm quoting you figures from manufacturers and from recent grants across the country. So please look into that as well.
Will do. Thank you again, Mr. Mazer. Really appreciate it, and enjoy and have a happy holiday season. Again, thanks for your past work for our transit riders.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's move on to item 5. Which is the Executive Director's Report of Leanne Redden. Leanne?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to members of the board and guests. I want to welcome everyone to our final meeting for 2021. We have a busy agenda capped off by 2 guest speakers, so I want to kind of move through my comments pretty swiftly today. To begin, next slide, please. To begin, we received some good news last Friday from Governor Pritzker when he signed House Bill 106, which contained the temporary recovery ratio relief for our region. The bill authorizing the relief had been previously passed by the General Assembly during the legislative veto session back in October. So the legislation went into effect immediately after being signed and prevents the RTA region from being financially penalized in 21, 22, and 23 for failing to meet the 50% regional recovery ratio threshold. And as we have said in the past, this is only temporary relief, and we will continue to engage in a more comprehensive policy discussions surrounding the long-term future of the recovery ratio mandate in conjunction with discussions about state and regional funding support for our overall transit operations. So next slide, please. Today, we have two informational presentations, a semi-annual report on the capital development efforts and the quarterly performance report, which measures progress against the goals of Invest in Transit. That'll be followed by multiple items requiring your vote, including the certification of financial results for the third quarter and an ordinance amending the 21 through 25 capital program and ICE funding. We'll also ask for your approval on several contracts covering audit and design services, web support services for our RTAM site, our regional transit database and mapping hub, and a design and completion for our customer satisfaction, a design contract, and then work for completion on a customer satisfaction survey. We'll also seek your approval for the 2022 regional operating budget and 5-year capital program and provide an update and welcome guest speakers to discuss the ongoing development of the regional transit strategic plan. So next slide. With the rest of my report this morning, I want to just cover the budget, the public comment we've received since we last presented to you in November, and provide you an update on the strategic plan. As you all know, CTA, Metro, and PACE have been able to continue operations due to the infusion of the federal relief funding since spring 2020. The proposed 2022 regional transit operating budget totals approximately $3.4 billion, which is an increase of 4.6 over the financial plan for 2022 adopted pre-COVID. The 6 counties systems 5-year capital program totals approximately $5.3 billion, which is about 17% less than the 21 through 25 program. And that is simply because the last of the Rebuild Illinois bond funds were programmed in previous years. And so we've programmed them all into earlier years within the program. As a reminder, the new federal infrastructure funds are not yet included in the 5-year capital program, and that will need to be captured to some extent to the speaker's earlier comments, will need to be captured, and modifications will need to be captured in a future amendment. Yesterday, we closed the public comment period on the budget, which included a public hearing held on December 1st, at which more than a dozen members of the public spoke, the majority about their desire to see the transit system move swiftly towards electrification of its bus fleet. We have also received dozens of individual emailed comments about electrification and more than 450 signatures on a petition asking that no buses that use fossil fuels be purchased going forward by either CTA or PACE. First, I want to thank all the commenters for their engagement, and we are encouraged by their participation in this process and are really grateful for their concern. I want to add that the RTA strongly supports Metro, CTA, and PACE's commitment to reducing reliance on fossil fuels, including all public transit buses in the Chicago region being zero emission or electric by 2040. It is also, I think, important for us to acknowledge that that transportation is the largest cause of greenhouse gas emissions in Illinois. And in the Chicago region, surface transportation accounts for roughly 29% of all emissions. But public transportation makes up a very small percentage of that. In fact, a well-utilized, as the chairman just sort of noted, well-utilized public transit system takes hundreds of thousands of cars off the road each day. And while transit agencies are committed to reducing their reliance on fossil fuels, it is also important to understand that the expense and the limitations of this technology are, in our future. For example, powering vehicles via the electric power grid will reduce greenhouse emissions, but since our power grid still ultimately relies on fossil fuel sources, it isn't a perfect solution. So there is a lot more work to be done. I don't say that to dismiss the concerns from our commenters, but their comments have made an impact on the determination and the actions and plans of the service boards, as noted. And I affirm that the RTA wants to move swiftly towards zero emissions. And we have very encouraging signs within the new infrastructure bill that will really help speed us along in this process and move this along in a much faster way. And I also want to stress the important factor in improving air quality and combating climate change in our region is to continue to encourage the use of public transportation by residents of Illinois. That will ultimately have the greatest impact. And there will be more to come as we look to make amendments to reflect capital program changes related to the recently passed federal infrastructure bill. You'll hear more about some of the details on all of this in today's budget presentation. So next slide, please. Transitioning to an update on the strategic plan. Before we end the year, I want to give you an update on where we are in developing all three tracks, and particularly in the engagement space. Your action on the budget will mark an important juncture in the development of the financial planning track, which will move toward the development of the 10-year financial plan. While that work will work closely with the strategic planning and engagement teams to center their work around issues identified during our initial engagement process. The strategic planning track is currently focused on procuring the services of a consultant, as well as hearing from researchers and academics about how we can incorporate a tool or some better method to better measure access to transit for everyone in our region. This track is also currently focused on developing a report on what we've heard during this engagement phase. So next slide, please. As you know, the first 5 months or so have been heavily focused on listening and letting new audiences know we want to hear from them. The engagement track has included our guest blog series, bringing together voices from across the region on a range of topics, a successful public forum last month, and a public survey that garnered more than 800 responses in a month. Our stakeholders and the riding and non-riding public are eager to weigh in on what they want to see in their transit system, and we are eager to hear their thoughts. Additionally, we heard from you, from our Citizens Advisory Board, and are continuing to have our staff present and engage with different groups on transit topics they are focused on. This week, for example, staff met with mayors and staff from the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. In January, we will kick off what we are calling our Movers Workshop. This will entail a larger kickoff meeting with stakeholders and advocates from across all 6 counties, including representatives from all 3 service boards. And in March, we will continue with a series of smaller working groups to dive deeper into topics we identify as priorities from this process. At our February meeting, you will hear a report on what these priorities are based on and what we've heard, during these listening sessions. A report that lays out what we've heard and what we have and who we have heard from, and identifies what we as an agency can impact, will go out for public comment after that meeting. And so that by spring, we will have a clear path forward for the rest of the strategic plan development. So today we will conclude our guest speaker series for this year with two professionals with deep passion about public transportation and the changes needed for it to be sustainable and accessible. We'll hear from Dr. Judy Shanley, the Assistant Vice President for Easter Seals, Education and Youth Transition Programs. She'll share her perspective on how RTA's strategic plan should address the mobility and transportation needs of all riders. And after her, Jim Aloisi, the former Secretary of Transportation for Massachusetts and current lecturer at MIT, will discuss funding sustainability and system adaptation. We're grateful to both of them for sharing their insights and spending some time with us, and look forward to any questions you may have for them. So with that, I will turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman, but not before I wish everybody a safe and healthy, happy holidays and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Leanne, very, very much. Any questions or comments for Leanne before we move on?
Mr. Chairman, Director Cotel has a raised hand.
I think I never lowered my hand.
That's good.
I see no other raised hands, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Tom. The nuns in grade school would appreciate that you do raise your hand, though. So thank you.
Yeah,
All
they
right.
let you have it.
And they let you have it, right? My grandfather always told me better to have the hand raised than to have them hit you across the knuckles when it's down. We'll move on with that. Item 6A is a presentation of the semi-annual project management oversight report. And I think that's Violet, is it not?
Yes, it is. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. And
Good morning, Violet.
my name is Violet Gunka, and I am the Division Manager for Project Management Oversight and Compliance. Today, I will present the current report on project management oversight. Next slide, please. RTA implements the PMO program pursuant to Section 2.01B of the RTA Act. RTA is required to oversee the Service Board's capital programs and expenditures. PMO is part of RTA's fulfillment of this requirement. The focus of the PMO program is implementation, delivery, and completion of active projects. It includes oversight of all state-funded transit projects, regardless of budget, and all other projects with budgets of $10 million or more, regardless of funding source. The PMO program supports the RTA's Invest in Transit strategic plan as we focus on ensuring that we are efficient stewards of the capital funding. Through this program, we work with the RTA capital team and the service boards to ensure that capital funding is spent efficiently and effectively. The projects presented in the PMO report show how we deliver value on our investments, build upon the strong transit network that we have, and help us stay competitive. RTA and the service boards have been working on improving the transparency in the capital program. The information in the semi-annual report provides details on current projects in the region. The report was provided to you with the board materials, and it will be published on the RTA website following the board meeting. Also, updated PMO project information will be available on the RTA's redesigned RTEMS website starting in January 2022. Next slide, please. At this time, we have many state-funded projects starting up, so we would like to provide some background on the PMO process. First, the service boards complete and submit grant applications for the Rebuild Illinois and PAYGO funding that are reviewed and approved by the RTA and IDOT. After the grant funds are awarded, the service boards finish up their project planning and complete the procurement process for the project. Once the procurement process is completed at the service board level, the RTA concurs on the procurements and a notice to proceed is issued for the project. The RTA PMO process starts once there is an executed agreement with the contractor and project scope activities have commenced. From this point, the PMO considers the project to be active. The PMO team monitors the project scope, schedule, and budget against the baseline approved in the executed contract documents. All active PMO projects are included in the PMO report. A project exits the PMO process once it reaches substantial completion. After substantial completion, there are still closeout administrative activities and final invoices that are reviewed and approved by the RTA capital team. However, the scope has been completed and the project is no longer included in the PMO report. At this time, there are many more Rebuild Illinois and PAYGO projects in the procurement process at the service boards, but they are not yet included in the PMO report. To summarize, Rta Pmo projects are a subset of the capital program projects, and the PMO report provides a snapshot in time of the currently active PMO projects. Next slide, please. This PMO report includes 57 active projects that have over $2.1 billion of state funding. The level of funding has increased during this reporting period since the 2021 Rebuild Illinois and PAYGO grants were executed for CTA and Metra. The PAYS grants are in the process of being executed and are not yet included in these figures. There are 7 new Rebuild Illinois projects that entered the PMO process and 9 new PAYGO projects which are included in this report for the first time. The report also includes 4 state-funded projects that are funded with prior year's programs, as the service boards are still wrapping up some older projects and using up any remaining funds. The 61 current projects with budgets of $10 million or more represented in this report show an investment of over $7 billion into our system. This funding includes what's already been expanded and what is obligated for these projects. Some of these projects span over multiple years. The number of PMO projects that are 10 million or more increased by 12 from the last reporting period. Next slide, please. To date, over $2.5 billion in Rebuild Illinois funding has been awarded to the service boards for 58 projects proposed in the grant applications. As of November, over $69 million, or 3% of the total Rebuild Illinois funding, has been expanded. This PMO report includes 31 active Rebuild Illinois projects. 3 projects have been completed to date, and 24 projects are in the planning and procurement stage at the service boards. Similarly, over $442 million of PAYGO funding has been awarded for a total of 34 projects in the grant applications. At this time, over $172 million, or 39% of the total PAYGO funding, has been expanded. This PMO report includes 26 active PAYGO projects. To date, 3 projects have been completed and funding has been spent down on these projects. The remaining 5 projects are in the planning and procurement stage at the service boards. As mentioned previously, many of the Rebuild Illinois and PAYGO projects are just starting up and entering the PMO process. The majority of the new projects have no or very low expenditures as project milestones have not been met yet. Next slide, please. We briefly touched on the state-funded project budgets on the last slide. All of the state-funded projects are on budget. With respect to scope, there were 2 change orders executed in this reporting period, and 93% of projects are without change orders. The majority of projects are in the beginning stages, so there are not a lot of change orders at this time. All change order justifications were reviewed and concurred on by the RTA. The schedule performance for the state-funded projects is strong. 52 of the 57 state-funded projects are on schedule. As noted earlier, the project schedule is monitored against the approved schedule and executed contract documents. Work has continued during COVID-19 following social distancing and other CDC recommendations, and there were no major schedule impacts. A couple of the procurement projects had delays due to supply chain issues. Next slide, please. In the PMO report, we break down the projects into 3 categories, which include construction, maintenance and rehabilitation, and procurements. On this slide, you can see the graphical representation of the projects in these categories at each of the service boards. Construction includes all projects related to design or improvements to stations, bridges, and other transit facilities. The maintenance and rehabilitation includes projects like tracks, signal, and substation upgrades and improvements, as well as rehabilitation of rolling stock. The last category includes procurement of rolling stock, like rail cars or buses, technology like cameras, and parts or materials. Next slide, please. On this slide, we wanted to highlight some of the Rebuild Illinois projects. CTA is in the process of design for a new non-revenue vehicles maintenance facility at 61st Street. The facility will also include covered storage tracks for track maintenance equipment. This new facility is required to replace the 1890s facility that was demolished in 2009. The CTA is in the process of obtaining permits for site preparation, utility, and foundation work. The design validation process is ongoing. Metra is in the process of purchasing 15 remanufactured locomotives. The remanufactured locomotives will allow for increased horsepower, lower emissions, and greater fuel efficiency than the current fleet average. The cores for the first 14 locomotives are currently being built. The first locomotive is expected to be delivered in June 2022. PACE is moving forward with the design and construction of a new I-55 garage in Plainfield. The new facility will allow for further expansion of service on the I-55 corridor, reduce deadhead times, and alleviate overcrowding at the Heritage Garage. Currently, the contractor is progressing with construction by performing electrical and mechanical connections to the building, as well as framing, installation of ductwork, and overhead sprinklers for the second floor of the office building. Next slide, please. On this slide, we wanted to highlight state-funded projects that were completed in this reporting period. CTA completed survey work for the 3 Forest Park projects, which include the new track work from Halstead to Illinois Medical District, an accessible station at Racine, and a new substation and traction power equipment upgrades at Hermitage. This project only funded the work related to the surveys. Metra completed the rehabilitation of 30 Nippon Sharyo rail cars. The state PAYGO funding allocated to this project covered only the 30 rail cars that were completed. Metra will continue this rail car rehabilitation program under other projects with different funding sources. Next slide, please. This concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Violet, very much. And I love the transparency that we have in this process as well. Any questions on this?
One moment, Mr. Chairman. I see no questions at this time.
If not, then we'll move on to Peter Farnwald, who will do 6B, which is the presentation on the quarterly performance report for the third quarter of 2021. Morning, Peter.
Good morning. Good morning, Chairman Dillard and directors. I'm Peter Farnwald, Manager Strategic Planning at RTA in the Planning and Market Development Group. And I'm here to present the performance results for the third quarter of 2021. Next slide. So we continue to use the 3 goals from Invest in Transit, our regional transit strategic plan, to structure our quarterly reports. And I'll discuss Service Board operational and financial performance within the context of each strategic goal, as well as use a spotlight to focus on projects or programs related to each goal. As a reminder, we show results on a year-to-date basis, so this presentation compares performance of the first 3 quarters of 2021 in comparison to the first 3 quarters of 2020. So it is important to keep in mind that the first half of 2020 had 2.5 months of relatively normal operations and service before the pandemic was declared on March 11th. And in contrast, the first 3 quarters of 2021 were also unique as vaccination rates surged, schools went back up for in-person learning, and Illinois mostly reopened on June 11th. Next slide. So our first strategic goal, deliver value on our investment, focuses on 2 key questions. Did we get more funding, and are we efficient stewards of the funds that we have? Next slide, please. For this goal, we monitor progress by tracking capital and operating funding and expenditures. And looking at year-to-date third quarter results, capital funding decreased by $552 million from 2020. But this decrease reflects the Rebuild Illinois bond funds, the majority of which were programmed in 2020. Year-to-date capital expenditures of $831 million was a 0.5% decrease from 2020. And the system-wide operating cost per passenger trip remains nearly 17% higher compared to 2020, when we had 2.5 good months of ridership before the pandemic happened. And for the same reason, the fare revenue per passenger trip of $1.48 was 7% lower compared to 2020. Next slide. On the first spotlight, I'd like to show how the ongoing changes to operating cost and fare revenue per passenger trip. Looking at the chart, the operating cost per passenger trip is shown by the bars, with blue on the left representing each month of 2019 gold in the center for 2020, and the red to the right and for 2021. As you can see, the operating cost per trip went up nearly fivefold early in the pandemic when ridership dropped. More recently, as ridership increases, and the costs are going back down. And as of September, the operating cost per passenger trip is still roughly double pre-COVID rates, but is expected to continue to tick down as usage returns. The black line shows the fare revenue per trip, which bottomed out in June 2020 at 74 cents per trip, roughly 60% lower than the average fare paid in 2019. What we're seeing through September 2021 is an increase to an average fare of $1.46, still 20% below the 2019 average and holding fairly steady. As we move forward and expect to see improvements in ridership, the fare revenue per trip is likely to maintain its steady performance, as there are no proposed fare increases, and special reduced fare products have been introduced at CTA and Metro that will continue. The chart also illustrates how the fare revenue recovery ratio was dramatically impacted by COVID, as the costs and revenues shown on the 2019, the blue part of the chart, is how we should look in a normal year, whereas the yellow and red portions are highly unusual. We do track these results on a monthly basis on our strategic performance measures dashboard, so you can always track the progress of these and a number of other performance measures at any time. Next slide. Moving on, the second goal of Invest in Transit is to build on the strengths of our network, where we ask questions: did the region become more transit friendly? And are we focusing our limited resources wisely? Next slide. And for this goal, we've been measuring vehicle revenue miles. We look at vehicle revenue miles, the total miles the buses and rail cars travel in revenue service, as it reflects the amount of service available to our riders. The year-over-year percent change for the last 10 years is noted above each bar. Regional vehicle revenue miles for the first 3 quarters of 2021 was 0.3% higher compared to 2020. And over the 10-year time period reflected here, down 12.4%. Next slide. And for our second spotlight, we'll talk about one of the RTA's mobility pilots, which looks to build on our existing transit network to connect people to jobs. The Bedford Park Connect to Work pilot is a 2-year mobility pilot launched in December of 2020, the height of the pandemic. The RTA commitment is up to $200,000 in funding to purchase a software component of a mobility as a service, or a MaaS app. This app was developed by MoveIt and builds a public face for the pilot and connects the Bedford Park pilot users to the service options. And this chart shows weekly rides by the 3 types of service we're offering. Blue on the top is the free on-demand shuttle operated by VIA during weekday rush hours within the service area of Bedford Park and nearby communities, and including the CTA Orange Line Midway Transit Center. The other 2 services are both provided by Uber. The black bars show the last mile rides, which are standard Uber trips within the service area for each of the user and available during the day and evening, 7 days per week. The gray shows the late night ride service, which is discounted Uber rides anywhere in Cook County, targeting 3rd shift workers when transit options are limited to and from their homes. The free shuttle is the most popular service type in terms of number of completed rides. Demand for last mile and late night rides is nearly equal, which reflects the unique commuting patterns of Bedford Park's largely blue collar jobs, which require people to be on site and in person, as well as workers that may be more transit dependent. Both of these groups are focus of our ongoing recovery work. Once the pilot got up and running this past January, as you can see here, demand has been steady at 125 to 150 rides per week. We've learned that the connecting service to CTA is quite popular relative to our pilots, as evidenced by the numbers, and the most people using it are regular commuters. This is the first pilot in the region which brings together multiple providers and addresses the needs of late night and 3rd shift workers. And I'm pleased to note that in October, this pilot was awarded CMAP's Regional Excellence Award in Partners for Progress category. As we end the first year of the 2-year pilot, the project partners, the Village of Bedford Park, Cook County, and the RTA, are evaluating the pilot for any changes. Next slide. And the third goal is stay competitive, which asks, are we providing the kind of services that people want to ride? And are people satisfied with it when they do? Next slide. For this goal, we track ridership as well as metrics related to speed and reliability. System-wide ridership through the first 3 quarters of 2021 was 159.4 million, lower by 30.2 million compared to 2020, or 16% lower. However, third quarter ridership was 70% higher compared to the first quarter. So we have been seeing improvement throughout 2021. The system-wide average speed through September was 14.6 miles per hour, equal to last year. And on-time performance through September was 80.2% for CTA bus, down 3 percentage points, and 58.9% for CTA rail, up 2 percentage points. Metro reported lower on-time performance in 2021, but exceeded its target of 95%. Pace bus on-time performance was not available at this time. Next slide. And for our third spotlight, we're going to talk about recent observations from the RTA's Customer Satisfaction Survey panel. In August, we asked our panel about their past and current use of transit and feelings and expectations about future use of transit. We received just over 1,800 responses and separated them into 2 groups. Those that have continued to use transit throughout the pandemic, at least to some extent, who we are calling current riders. That's the upper line in blue on the chart. And those that stopped using transit completely during the first year of the pandemic, from March 2020 to April 2021, who we refer to as lapsed riders, and shown in orange in the lower line. This chart shows we found from asking how they have used transit earlier in the year and their expectations for future use. And for the lapsed riders, we saw the beginning of a return this past spring, with 16.8% saying that they had begun using transit to some extent, with more returning over the summer and with expectation of continued return over the next year. The blue line shows how the current riders, who have been using transit to some extent throughout the pandemic, expect also to have an increasing use through 2022. So as can be seen, those that stopped using transit during the first year of the pandemic have been less likely to return as those who continue to use transit in the early stages of the pandemic. But neither group expects to be using transit as much as before COVID, at least out to 2023. And consistent with other surveys, we saw an expectation the amount of work from home for commuters remain at higher levels than pre-COVID. So the number of daily transit trips made by these riders will likely be less as they do return. We are looking at these observations relative to what we have learned from the non-rider lapsed rider survey this last winter, and we're going to go back to our panelists for an update this month. Next slide. So in conclusion, our current average cost per trip is higher than pre-COVID, but decreasing as riders return. Bedford Park Pilot continues to provide valuable last mile connections, and our August customer satisfaction panel shows a slow return to transit. This concludes my presentation, and I really appreciate your time and attention, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. Questions or comments from the board before we move on to action items?
I see no raised hands at this time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Peter. We'll now move on to the items under 7. And the first one is item 7A, and that's resolution certifying the financial results for the third quarter of 2021. B, you're on.
Mr. Chairman, actually, Bill Lackman will be presenting this item. So
okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, Bill. Thank you, B.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, this is RTA Treasurer and Budget Manager Bill Lackman. Today, I am presenting the year-to-date financial results through the third quarter of 2021, which are subject to certification. As you recall, this item was deferred from last month's agenda. Normally, we would be providing October results at the December board meeting, but instead, I will provide a few October highlights as I cover the third quarter results. Due to the combination of surging sales tax receipts and good expense performance, the constraint on relief funding drawdowns for fare revenue replacement has dragged down the regional recovery ratio to 43.7% through October and 42.5% through October. As Leanne noted, a bill providing for recovery ratio relief for RTA fiscal years 2021 through 2023 was passed by the General Assembly in late October and signed by the governor just last Friday. While this amendment of the RTA Act temporarily suspends the financial penalty for not meeting the 50% recovery ratio requirement, it does not change the 50% recovery ratio requirement itself, at least not for actual financial results. Therefore, at the end of this presentation, I will be recommending that the CTA, Metra, Pace Suburban Service, and the region as a whole found not in substantial accordance with budget through the third quarter. Next slide, please. System ridership approached 50% of pre-pandemic levels in September, but lagged budget by about 3%. Metra and Pace reported favorable to budget results, ridership results, while CTA finished unfavorable to the monthly budget. The current adopted budget, shown by the dashed line, assumed that ridership would continue to recover to about 65% of pre-pandemic levels by year end. However, the Service Board's revised 2021 estimates, submitted in October with their 2022 budgets, reflect ridership finishing the full year below budget, which is consistent with the trend in this chart. Next slide, please. August sales tax receipts exceed the year by 25%, continuing to an overall favorable public funding variance of $103.8 million, or 8.6%, through the third quarter. The 7.2% unfavorable funding variance for ADA paratransit is due to lower than anticipated CRISA requisitions, which are expected to get closer to budget as we move forward. Next slide, please. System-wide operating expenses through the third quarter were $104.6 million, or 4.9% favorable to the amended budget, with each service board reporting favorable results, as highlighted here in light blue. Recovering ridership is expected to increase ADA paratransit expenses in future months, reducing that favorable expense variance somewhat. System-wide operating expenses through October were $122.4 million, or 5.1% favorable to the amended budget. Next slide, please. The strong sales tax and good expense performance we showed on the previous two slides continue to mitigate the amount of federal relief funding needed to support operations. While this is generally a good thing, through the third quarter, lower than expected relief funding requisitions have dragged down the operating revenue to $254.3 million, or 27% unfavorable, as shown by all the red in this table. This in turn is continuing to impact operating deficit results and recovery ratio. Through October, operating revenue is $298.9 million, or 29% unfavorable to budget. Next slide, please. The regional recovery rate has now dropped well below 50% for the year, solely due to slower than anticipated relief funding drawdowns. Through the third quarter, the service boards included a total of $0.9 million of federal relief funding in operating revenue, almost $260 million less than budgeted. With relief funding included, the regional recovery ratio was 43%, 10 percentage points below budget, highlighted here in red. In addition, each mainline service board's recovery ratio is now significantly unfavorable to budget. Through October, the corresponding regional revenue recovery ratio was 42.5%, 10.7 percentage points below budget. Next slide, please. This final slide displays the variances of each service board's operating deficit from budget, our primary metric for evaluating substantial accordance. CTA, Metra, and Pace Suburban Service reported unfavorable to budget results in excess of the substantial accordance guidance of 3% due to lower than anticipated relief funding drawdowns. ADA Paratransit produced a favorable operating deficit of $9.9 million. The system-wide deficit of the service boards, including PACE ADA Paratransit, was $1.358 billion. This result is $149.8 million, or 12.4% unfavorable to budget. Accordingly, RTA staff recommends that the results of the CTA, Metra, PACE Suburban Service, and the region as a whole through the third quarter of 2021 are not in substantial accordance with the budget adopted by the RTA board on May 20th, 2021, with no remedial action required. Staff also recommends that the operating financial results of ADA Paratransit to be found in substantial accordance with budget. Through October, the system-wide operating deficit of the service boards, including ADA Paratransit, was $1.532 billion. That is $176.6 million, or 13% unfavorable to budget. That concludes my remarks on the third quarter results, as well as the highlights of October. And I'll try my best to answer any questions. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Bill, very much. Questions of Lackman?
Director Gorman has a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Director Gorman, good morning.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was all had my video and audio off. But anyway, going into the fourth, thanks for that, Bill. I really appreciate your presentation and you know how it's slow, so we can kind of grasp onto everything that you're presenting. But now going into the fourth quarter, with the third quarter and having some of these below budget and not in substantial compliance in the budget. And with the third quarter, the way it is, it's looking like the fourth quarter, is going in that direction as well. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
that's why I highlight numbers as well.
And then when, with us passing a budget, and making these projections, I'm sure this is all going to be taken into account. So we don't have as many negatives or, to be within compliance of the budget, correct?
Yeah, we're passing a budget, and with that budget, we're also indicating that we will do a budget amendment a funding amendment during first quarter of next year. And with those two combined actions, we should bring ourselves into a better place.
Okay. Yeah, with extra funding or coming in from the feds or whatnot to try to bring it in compliance. Correct?
So, yeah, we will, it's the combination of getting this funding, but also the surging sales tax and PTF levels that have created this problem. So as B has mentioned several times, it's a good problem to have, and we are basically encountering a math problem, not a problem with providing sufficient funding to provide service to our riders.
Director Gorman, this is B. Hickey. Thank you, Bill. I would also add, because I know it looks quite grim, but you do realize all of these federal relief monies that are not requisitioned will be carried over into future years. So, and there'll be positive budget variances. We probably should have thrown that in our notes. So, it's a good problem because sales tax is coming in higher. And so they're requisitioning less. More relief monies will be available for future years when we will need them. As you know, that there's some shortfalls. But that said, the other thing we were very concerned with is, of course, the recovery ratio. And the very good news is that we will not have a penalty, but we still may find some of the service boards not in substantial accordance, because what's been waived is the penalty to repay when you don't meet the recovery ratio, but not the actual recovery ratio. You're still supposed to, be meeting the 50% level. So all of this to say that we're going to be monitoring very closely. As Bill said, we're going to be doing a funding amendment sooner rather than later to incorporate the new ARP monies as well as the service boards revised budgets. But, the earlier we do it in the year, the less information that's available. So we have to time it accordingly and be flexible.
Thanks for that, B and Bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Director Melvin has a raised hand.
Yes, good morning, Director.
Hey, good morning. I just wanted to say, Bill, great report. B, thanks for further clarifications. The RTA staff is doing a great job of managing all these contradictions and interesting factors that have arisen. So thank you for a good report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director Melvin. Chairman, anybody else have a hand up?
I see no additional hands at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, then we need a motion and a second to approve this resolution as submitted, please.
We have a motion by Director Gorman, a second by Director Ross.
Thank you. And with that, Jeremy, please take a roll call.
Sure. Director Indalcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gavin.
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Yes.
Director Kotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Aye.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
16 ayes.
Thank you, and that is so approved. Item 7B are the ordinances authorizing the amendments to the 2021 to 2025 capital program and innovation coordination and enhancement of the ICE funded projects. And I think this is Jill Leary's to walk us through.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Actually, Tatiana Saunders, the Capital Program Manager, will present this item.
Excellent. Thank you, Tatiana.
Good morning, Chairman Dillard and members of the RTA Board. I'm here to request approval of two ordinances related to the region's 5-year capital program and Innovation Coordination and Enhancement, or ICE program. First, we are requesting a closing amendment of the 2021-2025 capital program, incorporating changes in program revenues and expenses for CTA and METRA. And second, we are requesting your approval to reallocate ICE funds to CTA and PACE projects. Let me walk you through the changes we are recommending in the first ordinance. This quarter, we are asking you to approve the total net funding increase to the 5-year capital program of $14.5 million that affect both current and out years. Total increase for CTA is $14.3 million and for Metra, $210,000. The vast majority of these changes have net zero balance and relate to CTA projects that have been previously approved by the RTA board and are being reprogrammed to the out years due to CTA pushing a planned bond issuance to out years. In addition, CTA reprogrammed from previous years $14.3 million of Rebuild Illinois bond funds and RTA bonds due to changing priorities and project scope or budget changes. The changes to Metra program include $180,000 of federal formula funding released to our region by Southwestern Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission and $30,000 of Metra funds. The project and budget changes in the capital program are included in the memo and Schedule 2A and 2B attached to the ordinance. Moving on to the second ordinance, we are requesting your approval of reprogramming of ICE funds from completed CTA and PACE projects to projects that are in progress and need additional funding that outlined in your board memo. RTA staff has reviewed all these requests and found them to be justified as outlined in the ordinance request memo. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, we are seeking your approval of these two ordinances.
Thank you very much, Anna. Questions or comments?
I see no raised hands at this moment, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Then how about a motion and a second to approve?
Motion by Director Carey, a second by Director Groven.
Excellent. With that, please take the roll.
Director Indelcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson.
Yes.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gadding.
Aye.
Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Yes.
Director Kotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
16 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. And that is approved. Item 7C is an ordinance adopting the 2022 Regional and Service Board budgets. B, is this one yours?
Yes, yes. Good morning, Mr. Chairman again and members of the board. As I begin my presentation, I'd like to thank the service boards and the RTA budget and capital teams for their efforts on the 2022 RTA Regional Operating Budget and Capital Program. As we've said in the past, each budget season presents a unique set of challenges, and that was certainly the case again this year. Let's start with a quick recap of the 7-month process that has led to today's proposal. In May, the RTA board approved and released the 2022 budget call. During the summer, funding levels were presented to and deliberated with the service board finance teams. On September 15th, the RTA board adopted the operating and capital funding amounts. The service boards each submitted their preliminary budgets and capital programs to the RTA. In October, the CTA Metro and PACE boards adopted their individual 2022 budgets and capital programs in their November board meetings, comprising the regional operating program budget. Next slide, please. The proposed regional capital budget has been available for review and comment on the homepage of the RTA website since November 11th. As required by the RTA Act, Leanne presented the proposed budget and capital program to the county boards during November and December, finishing with King County earlier this week. 2 weeks ago, Chairman Dillard presided over a lively RTA budget public hearing via Zoom. Directors Colson, Gathing, Gorman, Groven, Melvin, Ross, and Sager also attended virtually. We'd like to thank all of the members of the public who provided comments and input on this year's budget and program. 14 area residents testified at the budget hearing. In addition, we received a significant amount of public feedback via email summarized in the board memo. Most comments were related to the environmental impact of acquiring additional diesel and CNG vehicles and encourage more urgent electrification of CTA and public buses and PACE buses. All public comments were posted to the 2022 budget section of the RTA website. We also would like to express our appreciation to the many board members who participated in the county board presentations and the public budget hearing. Next slide, please. Last month, you heard the service board executive directors and CFOs present their individual budgets and capital programs. So I will focus on the consolidated regional operating budget before handing the presentation over to Jill for a presentation on the capital program. The proposed 2022 regional budget totals $3.405 billion, an increase of $150 million, or about 5% from the 2022 expense level we had planned before the COVID-19 pandemic. On the left are the assumed revenue sources. At 16%, service board operating revenue comprises a much smaller share of total revenue than normal due to the ongoing ridership and fare revenue losses by the pandemic. Those fare revenue shortfalls have been replaced by federal relief funding, which at $795 million comprises 23% of the projected revenue for 2022 operations. On the right, we show operating expense by agency. CTA's proposed budget assumes, sorry, my thing is freezing up here, the continued operation of a full service schedule. Metro's proposed budget continues to restore service to near pre-pandemic levels, and PACE's proposed budget maintains most of the route reductions implemented in the second quarter of 2020, while also initiating significant new service, such as the Dempster Avenue Pulse Line. CTA comprises just over half of the regional budget, followed by Metro, PACE Suburban Service, ADA Paratransit, and RTA Debt Service. The RTA agency budget that I presented last month requires 2.1 less funding than was in the pre-COVID 2022 plan, represents 1.4% of regional expenses, and it is also included in the proposed ordinance for approval, alongside with service board budgets. Next slide, please. As mentioned in the third quarter results presentation, recovery ratio relief for 2021, 2022, and 2023 has now been signed into law by the governor. However, at the time of the budget submittal, the 50% requirement was still in place, and the service board's proposed budgets reflect that. Each of the service board's 2022 budgeted recovery ratio meets or exceeds the required level adopted by the RTA board in September. As a result, the regional recovery ratio for 2022 is budgeted at 51.9%, meeting the 50% statutory requirement. The proposed CTA Metro and PACE Suburban budgets have properly included federal relief funding in their recovery ratio calculations as authorized by the RTA board. The 2022 ADA paratransit budget does not include any federal relief funding, but meets the required recovery ratio of 10% by applying approved credits. Next slide, please. The proposed service board budgets and two-year financial plans achieve balance by incorporating existing and anticipated federal relief funding as shown in this table. As at assumed RTA funding levels, the proposed Metro and PACE budgets would exhaust most, but not all, of the existing federal relief funding, comprised of CARES Act, CRISA, and the recently allocated ARP Act funding. The proposed CTA budget and two-year plan would exhaust all of CTA's existing federal relief funding, leaving a shortfall of $226 million in 2024. This shortfall is anticipated to be resolved with additional discretionary ARP Act funding, which the CTA has applied for but not yet been awarded. Similar to last year's budget, we realize that we are asking the board to approve a two-year plan based on the reasonable assumption that sufficient additional ARP Act funding will be awarded to the CTA to close that 2024 gap. To alleviate this concern, regarding this assumption, we have included in the proposed ordinance a requirement for an early 2022 RTA funding amendment. Next slide, please. The budget ordinance requires staff to produce a 2022-2024 RTA funding amendment during the first quarter, most likely for the February or March meeting. This funding amendment will reforecast RTA sales tax, RET, and PTF funding based on the most recent trends, and will require the service boards to respond with the revised 2022 budgets and the 2023-2024 plans, which adhere to the amended funding amounts. While the amendment allows 30 days for the service boards to produce amended budgets, we are asking that the service boards begin work as soon as possible on their amended budgets and plans, which could possibly be adopted at the March RTA board meeting. With recovery ratio relief now signed into law, the funding amendment may also adjust the required service board recovery ratios downward, potentially resulting in a regional budget which is budgeted below the 50% level. Regional recovery ratio transparency will take on increasing importance as the strategic plan effort guides the service board's budgets toward the new normal we have been talking about for some time. In summary, the early 2022 funding amendment and budget amendment process should clean up the 2024 gap and provide us with an update on the expected longevity of all federal relief funding. In addition, the service boards will have an opportunity to refresh their ridership and revenue assumptions and potentially adjust their expense levels through 2024. After all, the budgets we are asking you to adopt today are already a few months old, and an amendment requirement recognizes the need to periodically update our projections as we have been doing so since the onset of COVID. And with that final thought, I'll turn it over to Jill for a look at the campaign program, the capital program. Next slide, please.
Thanks, B. I'll start off with a brief recap. For the last several years, based on the vision and goals of our strategic plan, Invest in Transit, the RTA and the service boards have been working together to articulate and advance a regional transit capital strategy. The enactment in June 2019 of Rebuild Illinois, the state's first large-scale transportation bill in more than 10 years, provided the RTA system with $2.6 billion over 5 years in state bond funding and an estimated $227 million annually in gas tax revenue, referred to as PAYGO dollars. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, the RTA and the service boards continued to execute the capital programming, including granting funds and constructing projects. Throughout 2021, the agencies worked together with the Illinois Department of Transportation to implement the Rebuild Illinois program. In 2021, the RTA and the service boards also drafted a new method for allocating federal formula and state PAYGO funds. This performance-based capital allocation process distributes funds based on need, project delivery timing, and regional priorities. The new approach better matches service board needs, puts a focus on equity and accessibility projects, and incentivizes the service boards to deliver projects to the region in a timely manner. This year, the state of Illinois also enacted legislation requiring a transparent prioritization process for Northeastern Illinois transit projects receiving state capital funds. Several regional plans and processes are already in place to guide the transit capital programming process, so RTA is currently reviewing the criteria outlined in the new legislation alongside current processes and criteria to determine where alignment is already occurring and where there are opportunities to better match with the new state legislation in future programming and reporting efforts. In the next few slides, I will provide an overview of the 5-year capital program presented in 3 ways: by the core requirements the transit agencies must fulfill, by Invest in Transit's 3 strategic goals for the 5-year timeframe, and by a set of specific priority projects identified in Invest in Transit that will be advanced with additional funding. Next slide. In total, the proposed regional 5-year capital program is $5.3 billion, which is 17% less than the previous 5-year program, since all of the Rebuild Illinois bond funds were programmed and granted in 2020 and 2021. After accounting for CTA debt service payments, the region has approximately $4.2 billion to program for capital projects between 2022 and 2026. This budget does not include any funds from the newly passed federal infrastructure bill, which will be included as an amendment to the capital program once the funding allocations are determined. Next slide. For the 5-year capital program, CTA's funding represents about 66%, Metra's share 28%, and PACE's capital improvements are approximately 6% of the investment in the region. Next slide. We continue to analyze the capital program based on the 3 sets of metrics found in Invest in Transit. The first analysis is by core requirements, which are central to the activities of the service boards. They are non-negotiable elements of agency operations that transcend immediate areas of focus. We can see $3 billion in funds are used on projects with the requirement of maintaining and improving safety and reliability, while projects to improve equity and achieve full accessibility will receive about $2.2 billion and $1.6 billion respectively. And finally, $1.3 billion worth of funds projects that meet regulatory requirements. Please note that the service boards may select up to 2 core requirements per project. For 2025 and beyond, each service board needs to ensure that at least 20% of their program fulfills the core requirements of improving equity or achieving full accessibility. Region-wide, 44% of funding, or $395 million, is programmed for projects that improve equity and achieve full accessibility in 2025, and 51% of the funding, or $446 million, is allocated to these core requirements in 2026. Next slide. The second analysis is by strategic goals. We considered funding by strategic goal from Invest in Transit. The strategic goals captured the RTA's and the service board's shared priorities. 58% of funding, or $3 billion, has been assigned to deliver value on investment, while 38% of funding, or $2 billion, goes to building on the strengths of the network. 4%, or just over $200 million, goes to staying competitive. The service boards primarily choose projects that help to maintain the current system, which are most often categorized as delivering value on our investment, rather than advanced expansions and enhancements due to the limited capital funding. Next slide. Finally, the third analysis is by priority projects. Shown here are the top 3 funded priority projects for each service board, as well as the total need over 10 years. The service boards have identified 75 priority projects that would advance with additional funding through Invest in Transit and subsequent annual updates. 4 have been fully funded. The current 5-year program funds a portion of several priority projects, but 25 of those projects did not receive any funding, alluding to the fact that the region needs more funding to meet the needs of our transit riders. Overall, the capital program funds just 14.5% of the region's total 10-year need. Next slide. We are also excited to announce that the regional capital program that we just discussed has been added to the redesigned and improved RTAM's website, which allows users to filter projects based on their same Invest in Transit criteria that we have just discussed. All projects have been grouped by their priority project, and each project shows the strategic goal and core requirement that it meets. Next slide. And furthermore, all capital projects are mapped in the RTAM's website, offering both the location of the project as well as the area that benefits from these regionally significant projects. You can see an example here. On the left, you will see a project location map. In this instance, the new Auburn Park Station, and on the right, the benefit area. Staff would be happy to demo the new RTAM's website for any directors that are interested. I'll turn this back over to Bea to close the presentation. Next slide.
Thank you, Jill. In conclusion, staff recommends board adoption of the proposed operating budget and the 5-year capital program as outlined in this presentation. The budget proposals and capital programs that are detailed in the ordinance are balanced based on reasonable assumptions and meet the statutory regional recovery ratio of 50%. The proposed ordinance also requires an RTA funding amendment to be executed during the first quarter of 2022. This concludes our presentation. Jill and I will be happy to answer any questions. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, B and Jill. Questions or comments?
One moment, Mr. Chairman. Director Colson has a raised hand.
Yeah, briefly, I think the public should again be reminded that this budget process started many months ago. And this year we saw a great deal of discussion and contention leading to this day. It wasn't always easy to get here. I've been through a lot of these budget processes, and the December vote often seems anticlimactic, but the public needs to be assured that a lot of work got us to this point. So I'd like to commend the service boards and the RTA for working through this all year as we face a very frightening and an unknowable future. This is a good budget. It doesn't make everybody happy, but it's a good product.
Thank you.
Well said, Bill. Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Director Carey has a raised hand.
Yes. Come on, Pat.
I would like to, excuse me, join Director Colson in thanking the service bureaus and the RTA staff on doing all the work all year long to get to this point. I do have a couple comments, general comments I'd like to make. I think we've been focused in the last couple of years on the pandemic and the reaction to the pandemic and where we go and how we stay afloat. And how we deal with the federal relief that we've been fortunate to get from the federal government. And hopefully there'll be a little more coming to the CTA soon. So going forward, I don't think we should have any, I don't think we do have any expectations of additional relief. So we need to focus on how we're going to make it all work. And I think everybody is certainly in agreement on that. And I look forward to the discussion surrounding the budget amendment in the first quarter, once we know what the funding is and better projections on sales tax, et cetera. One thing, we've had a lot of discussion from the public and on this board about the climate change and the electrification of the buses. I would just like to say that what we're approving today is not ideal, I don't think. I'd feel better if we could make a decision today to say we're not going to order anything but electric buses going forward. I don't think we're in a position to do that today. However, I do look forward. I know CTA is, I think, on the cusp of completing a plan as to how they're going to achieve 100% electric buses by 2040, and I look forward to seeing that plan. And I believe Pace has said they will complete a plan by the end of 2022. And I would look forward also to seeing that plan and to understanding how the construction of the CNG garage and purchase of CNG buses contributes to that plan. I really urge, and you've heard this from me before, but I'd urge Pace to seriously consider that project and to have 100% electric buses on the street by 2040 and building and purchasing CNG buses in the mid to late 2020s. I'm not sure that is the best approach, but I look forward to hearing their plan. And then one other comment on the capital. We had approved a performance metrics, this board did, and we had decided to set aside certain funds based on the service bureaus meeting those metrics. And we said we wouldn't take that money until there was consensus on what we would, consensus among the three service bureaus on how we would spend that money. How would we reallocate it for capital projects across the service boards? And consensus hasn't been achieved. And I'm an optimist, and I assume that consensus will be achieved in the near future between the three service bureaus. However, should that not occur, I think this board has to step up at some point and not go into another budget year in 2022, at the end of 2022, without a mechanism to allocate that money. So I look forward to hearing more about that. Again, I appreciate everybody's hard work on this, and that's it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director Carey.
Director Ross has a raised hand, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning, JD.
Good morning. I'd like to piggyback on the comments from Directors Colson and Carey. I think it would behoove our board if we could learn more about what the obstacles are to going to electrification. I was frankly impressed by the number of presenters at our budget hearing. I think they articulated a case very well for the need to move in that direction and to do it quickly. On the other hand, I think there are some other things that weren't necessarily adequately covered in comments by those people, including the fact that, according to the information I have, that over 30% of our electricity generating capacity results directly from fossil fuels. So even going to electrification to produce that electricity, we're still using fossil fuels. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. But I'm just concerned that we as board members don't fully understand all the issues. And I guess what I'm really asking is if the staff could do something to provide us with more information, whether that's bringing in representatives from the service boards or experts from the industry. I think that would be very beneficial. And I, for one, would be very much interested in participating. That concludes my remarks.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Director Ross. Thanks, Jeremy. Who else has their hand up?
I see no additional hands at this time.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. How about a motion and a second to approve the item as submitted?
We have a motion by Director Lewis and a second by Director Carey.
Thank you. With that, will the secretary please take a roll call?
Yes. Director Indalcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gavin. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Aye.
Director Cotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
Going back to Director Gavin. 15 ayes, 1 absent, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And so that is approved. And again, just thank you to the board members and the staff. You know who you are that work so very hard on a very, very difficult budget ordinance adoption this year. Item 7D is authorization of a contract for professional auditing services. John Yu is available to answer any questions of the board if there are any. Otherwise, I'll ask for a motion in a second on this one.
Director Indalcio has a raised hand, Mr. Chairman. It may be a motion.
David, a motion or a question?
It's a motion to approve.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Director Indalcio.
And second by Director Cotel.
Thank you. With that, will the secretary please take a roll call?
Yes. Director Indalcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gavin. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Aye.
Director Cotel,
Aye.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Melvin,
Yes.
Director Pang,
Yes.
Director Ross,
Yes.
Director Sager,
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
15 ayes, 1 absent, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And that ordinance is adopted. 7E is an ordinance authorizing a contract amendment with clarity for RTAM's support. And Jill Leary is available to answer any questions if there are any on this. If not, again, a motion and a second would be appreciated.
Not seeing any. Okay, motion by Director Grove and a second by Director Sager.
Thank you, too. With that, Secretary, please take a roll call.
Director Indelcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gathing. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Yes.
Director Cotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
15 ayes, 1 absent.
Thank you. And 7E is approved. 7F is an ordinance authorizing a contract for integrated graphic design and on-demand services. And Tina Fassett Smith is available to answer if there are any questions from the board. Just for public edification, obviously the board has all of these ordinances with supporting background previously submitted to them.
Director Sager does have a raised hand, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Dr. Sager.
A motion to approve.
Thank you, Doctor. How about a second?
A second by Director Holt, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Alex. With that, Jeremy, please take a roll call.
Sure. Director Indelcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gathing. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Yes.
Director Cotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Lewis.
Yes. Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes,
15 ayes, 1 absent, Mr. Chairman.
thank you. And that item is approved. 7G is an ordinance authorizing the contract amendment for the customer satisfaction survey. And Jill Leary is available to answer any questions the board may have. But if there aren't any, motion in a second, please.
Motion by Director Lewis, a second by Director Canty.
Thank you. With that, on 7G, Mr. Secretary, please take a roll call.
Director Indelcio.
Aye.
Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson. Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gathing. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Yes.
Director Cotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pang.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Aye, yes.
15 ayes, 1 absent, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And that is adopted. The last of the action items is 7H, and that's approval for travel expense reimbursements. If there's any questions or comments on that, let us know. Otherwise, how about a motion and a second to approve item 7H?
Motion by Director Ross and a second by Director Cotel.
Thank you. And with that, Mr. Secretary, please take a roll call.
Director Indalcio. Director Indalcio. Director Canty.
Aye.
Director Carey.
Aye.
Director Colson.
Aye.
Director Fuentes.
Aye.
Director Gadding. Director Gorman.
Aye.
Director Groven.
Aye.
Director Holt.
Yes.
Director Cotel.
Aye.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Melvin.
Yes.
Director Pank.
Yes.
Director Ross.
Yes.
Director Sager.
Yes.
Chairman Dillard.
Yes.
Coming back to Director Indalcio.
Aye.
15 ayes, 1 absent, Mr. Chairman.
Great. And 7H is approved. Thank you all. Moving on is item 8, and that's the topic of our next regional transit strategic plan. Earlier, Leanne Redden introduced Dr. Judy Shanley, but we'll hear from Dr. Shanley. I don't know, Leanne, if you have anything else to add before Judy begins her presentation. But Dr. Shanley, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, directors, and to the RTA staff for making this happen. I'm Judy Shanley, and I'm with the National Office of Easter Seals, which happens to be right down the street from the RTA headquarters building. I'm going to talk to you today about wearing a couple hats that I have. One being representing Easter Seals, which I hope you know a little about our organization. We're a national nonprofit organization. We've got over 60 affiliates nationally, so states have their own affiliate, their own Easter Seals services, where we provide direct services to individuals with disabilities and veterans and older adults. I'm also going to be talking to you about, from the hat that I wear relates to my work as a director of federal programs. And one in particular is the National Center for Mobility Management, which I'll refer to as NCMM. So first, I'm going to give you an overview of NCMM, and then I'm going to talk to you a little about some of the trends and topics we see. Because we work nationally, we get to see a lot of what's going on across the country in large urban systems and small rural environments. And I'll share some of those topics and trends that may influence your strategic planning. And then finally, I'm going to share some resources with you. As a federal transit entity, I get to come in touch with a lot of resources, and I'll share some of those with you. So next slide, please. The National Center for Mobility Management, it was funded in 2013, so we've been around a while. We're funded by the Federal Transit Administration, and really our goal is to help states and regions build networks of coordinated service. So we bring mobility providers and transportation providers together with human service organizations to address customer needs. And our ultimate goal is to facilitate access to health care and employment and opportunity that individuals with disabilities, those with low income, and seniors board. And we support coordination across federal agencies and their state counterparts, and that's called mobility management. So the notion of building networks across human service and transportation is what we refer to as mobility management. We are our partnership. Easter Seals is working collaboratively with the American Public Transportation Association and the Community Transportation Association of America. And we provide technical assistance to states and regions. And just to give you some examples, years ago, you might remember this, Michael Vandekreek from the RTA and I worked together and working with Chicago Public Schools on some transportation education curriculum. You think about it, students are your future riders. And so we worked on professional development materials for educators and families and students to increase their knowledge about transportation options innovations. Most recently, I worked with a team from the RTA on a mobility management study to explore the viability of mobility management for the region. And another example out of state, I worked with the state of New Hampshire to advance their mobility management network. And we actually worked with their state Department of Health and Human Services, who recently support mobility management through a $3 million investment in mobility management. So that just gives you a flavor of some of the things that we do. Next slide. So when I think about the mobility landscape and the trends and the topics that are out there, there are really three buckets of things going on nationally. One is integrated and innovative service. Two is a real strong focus on inclusion and equity. And then finally, we see transit agencies, we see state departments of transportation, even federal agencies invigorating their systems. So let me talk to you a little about a couple of these things. We're seeing transit agencies provide various modes and create continuums of inclusive service. So there's less siloing across the types of services that are provided, the types of providers that are part of this continuum. We're also seeing agencies think beyond traditional paratransit. There was model demonstration programs going on in the MBTA. DART, the Dallas Area Regional Transit Authority, has been looking at different ways to provide paratransit so that it's more reliable, it's less expensive, and it's more inclusive. And things like on-demand and microtransit are just two of the innovations that are being used. And then finally, technology is certainly advancing what is going on in the field in terms of inclusive transportation. It was mentioned that MOS, the mobility as a service notion, where we're integrating the scheduling and the dispatching and the reporting functions of transportation service. That's really a driver of allowing individuals with disabilities to have more inclusive service. There's a focus on universal design. So thinking about not just the passenger trip, not just the mode of transportation, but the pathways and the walkways that enable people to access transportation. If you can't get to a bus or you can't get to a train, then it's all for naught. And the thing that is exciting about the work that we're seeing nationally is individuals with disabilities are at the table every step of the way. They're decision makers, they're employed, they're really engaged in the provision of service around the country. And then finally, invigorating systems. There was a recent TCRP report where I was part of a study that looked at bus redesign, and agencies are thinking about how they deliver bus service and the routes and the partners that are involved in that bus service. There's also a big federal initiative that's not going away, and it's called the Coordinating Council on Access and Mobility. And this encourages 11 federal agencies to use their resources, because think about it, transportation shouldn't just be a Department of Transportation function or support. Other federal agencies like the Department of Health and Human Services, Department of Labor, have an interest in ensuring that their stakeholders access particular community sites and employment and education. So with the Coordinating Council on Access and Mobility, we see that agencies are mixing rider types on vehicles and mixing funding sources and being creative about providing service delivery. And the Federal Transit Administration has developed some recent publications around grading funds. They're going to have a report coming out on using vehicles for other populations and vehicle sharing. So there's a philosophical and ultimately a tangible impetus to be thinking about a non-traditional service delivery. And all of this can be achieved through mobility management. When you think about the human service side and transit side, everybody has to be at the table thinking about these innovations. We can't do it alone. The next slide is just a graphic of something that struck in my head. It's people sitting around a table and they're talking, and you see some profit chart on the wall with profits going down, and the caption reads, "What if we don't change it all and something magical just happens?" Well, it's very unrealistic to think magic is going to happen. And so your strategic plan, your human service transportation plan, all the great work that the RTA does with your guidance and your advice is really leading Chicago forward in terms of innovation. On the next slide, I'm sharing some resources with you. Take advantage of the federal resources that exist. FTA is funded millions into these centers. There's my center, the National Center for Mobility Management. There's another center called the National Aging and Disability Transportation Center, which focuses on the Americans with Disabilities Act and requirements, and really provides practical strategies for implementing ADA compliance. The RTAP program is a 5311 program, so states receive money for rural transportation. There's a shared use mobility center, which also happens to be in Chicago, which is looking at all those innovations. And then finally, there's an applied transit technology center. Recently, FTA just funded a workforce development center. We know that there's workforce shortages in all our systems. I think the service boards are experiencing that. So use the resources, learn from the resources, take advantage of the free materials that these federal programs have to offer. And the next slide, I just offer you my contact information. I'm available to you at any time. I love doing this work. I think it was explained. I'm passionate about this work, and I appreciate the work that you do in Chicago to facilitate access to rides for a variety of populations. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy, very much. Any questions or comments?
Director Fuentes has a raised hand, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Good morning. Morning,
Morning.
everyone. I'd just like to, thank you for all the work you do. I work with a lot of organizations that deal with people with disabilities, and being one myself, growing up, as a matter of fact, going to Easter Seals, I had to take a bus. So I think as we go forward with trying to make it more accessible, what I like about your organization is that you keep looking at changes. What can we do better? Because the goal, I think, and the goal of the RTA and Michael and his team is to exceed ADA standards, and the best way to do that is through new information and making sure that when we have an opportunity to buy new equipment or to do a new station, that we're using the best possible way of getting accessibility. Thank you for all you do. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yep, it's all about universal design, building it in from the get-go, so you don't retroactively have to think about accessibility. So thank you.
Thank you too very much.
And I see no additional hands, Mr. Chairman.
Great. Doctor, thank you very much for joining us. Your comments are really well taken. We deeply appreciate your professional input. With that, I'll move along to a great transit professional from Massachusetts, Jim Olosi. Thank you for joining us. And Jim, you should be happy to know that we do have MIT graduates on the staff here at the Chicago RTA.
Well,
Jim, it's all yours.
thank you. Can you hear me all right?
Perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I come to you from Boston, where we aspire to be Chicago. So I do teach urban transportation planning and policy at MIT. I was formerly the Secretary of Transportation here in Massachusetts under the prior governor. And I'm also involved in local transit advocacy. And I'm sharing with you some thoughts today about transportation funding that I hope might be informative and just a framework for thinking as you go forward over the next few years with planning for the future. So this is a quote I like to use in one of my classes from the fellow who was one of Bob Moses's right-hand guys in New York, who makes the obvious point that money means everything. Unless you get it, you're going nowhere. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of talk these days about transit agencies across the country hitting a fiscal cliff or cliff edge when the federal COVID relief money runs out. I call it a transportation operating budget crisis, because when most agencies say we're going to hit a wall, we're going to reach a fiscal cliff when the federal aid runs out, what they're really saying is we're not expecting pre-COVID ridership to return to 100%. And we rely heavily on ridership for revenues. And when the federal relief money expires, we've got a problem. And they do. Now, I saw some of the report earlier, and I note that Boston, like Chicago, and many other agencies have fair recovery ratios. I like to say and challenge people to think about fair recovery ratios as an artificial construct, right? Why do they exist? What's the underlying message of a fair recovery ratio? The underlying message is we expect that transit operating expenses are paid for in large part by user fees. It's not a controversial idea, but I wonder whether it's an idea that has the same kind of resonance going forward out of the pandemic. And I wonder, frankly, whether what the pandemic has shown, and next slide, please, and what we've known for a while is that fare revenues are the soft underbelly of operating budget stability. Now, this is a 2018 chart showing just generally, nationally on average, how operating what the revenue sources are for operating expenses. I'm probably telling you what you know already, but it's sort of interesting to see that the federal share is 7.8%. And in many states and many places and many agencies, it's much less than that. Next slide, please. What we know is that operating budgets, and I'm speaking from specific experience here locally with the MBTA, operating budgets were chronically in crisis before COVID. Transit use was trending downward nationally before COVID. We know that what COVID did was it accelerated that, and ridership plummeted. Now ridership's beginning to recover. It's a good thing. But my point here is that the trends that were putting pressure on operating budgets that were funded largely or significantly by fare revenues, those trends pre-exist COVID. COVID has accelerated them. And now we're all playing, frankly, some guessing games about how quickly that ridership will recover to certain levels. Next slide, please. It used to be the case in the 1970s, for those who can remember that far back, that the federal government actually contributed to transit operating budgets, right? They don't do that today, really. That got changed in the early 80s during the Reagan administration. But before that, you can see here from a chart that APTA put together some years ago that the federal government was actually contributing 21, 25, 30% of operating assistance on the federal level. Now, the federal government has chosen not to do that in the bipartisan infrastructure bill, right? The federal government has done that as a temporary measure through the various COVID relief bills, which is a very helpful thing. But there's nothing in the bipartisan infrastructure bill that would revert back to what was happening back in the 70s. So the point being, the feds have participated in this in the past. They could participate in this in the future, but at this point in time, that's not happening. It's not on offer. Next slide, please. In Massachusetts, we're experimenting with free bus pilots. The new mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu, has announced her desire to have 3 bus routes fare-free for a 2-year pilot. We did a short free bus pilot on the 28 bus here. which was carrying about 62% of pre-COVID riders during the pandemic. When the free bus pilot took place, that 62% went up to almost 100%, went up into the 90%. So I like to point out to people that the data that we're getting here in Massachusetts is that fares actually suppress ridership. Now, that's significant if you care about things, which I know you do, like getting more people more access to opportunities, whether that's jobs or healthcare or education. But it's problematic if you're stuck with a fare recovery ratio that says, gee, maybe the data is that fares are suppressing ridership. However, I need the fares to balance my budget. It's a dilemma that we're working out locally here. It's a dilemma that I think many agencies across the country will be dealing with as a combination of forces begin to converge. And if we can go to the next slide, I think the real point that I wanted to make, and this is looking out into the future, is that there is this thing happening now that I call the Great Convergence, right? And it's the convergence of transportation sector decarbonization and pandemic effects. So what do I mean by this? Most states, when they're looking at their transportation sector decarbonization plan, they're looking to a migration from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. Makes a lot of sense. President, the Congress have recently made significant federal investments on a new scale to support electric grids, to support electric vehicle charging. The president's driving around in a Ford truck that's electric to prove the point. The federal interventions in electric power grids and in EV charging, I think is going to help the transition to electric vehicles accelerate. When people begin to realize that it's a lot cheaper to actually own an electric vehicle over time, they're going to be more and more attracted to it. And what you see now happening in the industry is that the price of these things is coming down to a point where it won't be economical anymore for someone who has a choice to buy an internal combustion engine, right? There are something like 2,000 moving parts that need to be fixed in an internal combustion engine vehicle. There are like 20 in an EV, right? That, by the way, will change the whole business model for the folks who sell cars, right? Because auto dealers don't make money selling you a car. They make money fixing your car. There's a lot of disruption that's about to happen as in our quest to deal effectively with climate change, in our quest to decarbonize the transportation sector, we're shifting to electric vehicles. But there's also pandemic effects that are happening in the real moment, right? Which are reducing ridership. If you can go to the next slide, how these things converge. By definition, if you're decarbonizing the transportation sector and moving to electric, that means from a state level, your gas tax is going to, if you're successful and it's 100% absorption of EVs by 2050, which is what Massachusetts says we're going to achieve, your gas tax is now zero. There's no gas tax revenue anymore. In Massachusetts, that's almost $1 billion funding gap that no one has a plan yet to figure out how to fill. For those states, and there's only California that I know of, that have carbon fees, transportation climate initiative fees on the wholesale price of carbon, that goes to zero, right? And there's no plan to replace that lost revenue. At the same time, the time and the scale of transit ridership recovery is uncertain. So fare revenue will remain diminished, in my opinion, and unstable. Plus, agencies have additional operating costs associated with higher intensity of cleaning vehicles, higher intensity of ventilation transformations on vehicles, moving to electric from diesel. And I think there's going to be a situation where you're going to have to pay people more money to do certain things. So I see how these can converge. States are going to have to find new revenue sources to replace the gas tax. as they're doing that, they should be also thinking about new revenue sources, I submit to you, to replace some fare revenue, right? So that there's a new way of thinking about how we fund transportation from a multimodal perspective going forward. As this great convergence is taking place, I guess to summarize, it is an opportunity moment for the transit and rail sectors to think about what the future might be in terms of more stable funding for operating expenses, and to look to the state's need to deal with this issue holistically, because the state eventually is going to need to figure out how to replace the gas tax, which has been stable for well over a century, but won't be anymore once we embrace the new world of electric vehicles. Next slide, please. So what are the alternatives as we're searching for a more stable revenue source? Next slide. And here I just propose a framework, right? And again, I feel like I may be telling you what you know, but this sometimes it's helpful to have frameworks to guide one's thinking, right? So you've got different buckets. You've got a public sector driven way to fund transportation, and a private sector driven way. The private sector driven way is typically related to capital expenses, not operating. So let's focus more on the public sector. Public sector driven ways of raising money come down to, are you going to do it by looking to transportation sources, or are you going to do it by looking at non-transportation sources? Next slide. And so if you look at transportation sources, here's the list. Some of them are going to be defunct, as I predict, as I point out, once we move to EVs, like the gas tax. And then you've got fares. I have this little R there, meaning these are regressive taxes unless you means test them. You might have a sales tax on gasoline in the moment. That will go down to zero when you're all EV. You can have parking assessments. You can have ride hailing fees, which I know Chicago's done. In London, they have an ultra low emission zone as well as a cordon pricing zone. You can have road pricing, and there are many approaches to road pricing, right? It's not just flat tolling. It's conventional tolls, it's congestion pricing, time of day, traffic management. You can do what London did and have a cordon around a city. Vehicle miles traveled fee, which is something that was piloted in Oregon. You can charge for use. Next slide. And there are other ways to collect revenue from transportation sources that are less, I would say, less direct, but then again, not typically for operating costs. You can leverage land values through value capture. Federal Transit Administration has, I think, a pretty robust joint development program, but again, that's for developing areas with the private sector around transit nodes. These are ways to fill capital gaps, not necessarily operating gaps. Next slide. And then there's lots of ways to get revenue from non-transportation sources. You're doing some of that now with the sales tax. There's general appropriations. In Massachusetts, we're having a debate that will be on the ballot, a question of whether we're going to have a so-called millionaire's tax, and half of that money would go to transportation. In Massachusetts, we're also discussing something called regional ballot initiatives, which would allow municipalities to come together and collectively impose local sales taxes or other fees that they would then be able to use as their contribution to more sustainable mobility interventions, supporting transit and rail. In France, they have the Versement approach, where they actually have a transport tax on employers that benefit from their proximity to transit access. So there are lots of ways to do this, and I can put the last slide on. I think it's the last slide. So thank you. I know time is short. I'm just offering these ideas both as a framework for thinking and as a way to connect dots that often don't get connected, particularly the question of transportation sector decarbonization, what its real fiscal impacts will be, which may come more quickly than we imagine. particularly now that the federal government is putting real money on the table to incentivize and accelerate the effort, and how that might connect to the reality of pandemic effects on ridership, on fares, and on the stability of operating budgets. It's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of this stuff is politically challenging. I understand that. But I think it's time for people to give it thought and to think about how to leverage these challenges and turn the challenges into opportunities. So thank you for the chance to speak, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Jim, very much. Any questions or comments for him?
No raised hands at the moment, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
So we'll move on. We'll move on to item 9, which is new business. Any new business to come before the board today?
I do see a raised hand by Director Melvin, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Director Melvin.
Hey, sorry, I was a little slow. Jim, if you're still there, thank you very, very much. It was really interesting to take us through that range of ideas about, funding, and I really very, very much enjoyed it and appreciate it. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Director Melvin. All right, seeing no one.
Mr. Chairman, Director Galley also has a raised hand.
Yeah.
Hi, I just wanted to note I was on the phone and you couldn't hear my audio, but I wanted to note my vote of yes for the previous action item.
Right, it'll be so noted for the record. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Director Ross also has a raised hand.
Director Ross.
Just a question. Will the slides from the two presenters remain as part of our board minutes so that we can access those later? These were two great presentations, I thought.
They were. If not, JD, we'll make sure, Leanne, please make sure that we all get a set of those slides. They're great.
Yeah, we will make sure that they're available to you and incorporate them in the minutes as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So if there's no new business today, I just want to wish everybody a healthy and happy holiday season. Like last year, this has been a difficult year in many respects, but we all have plenty of blessings, and mine among them are being able to work with you all, a tremendous board, a great staff, and it's been a good year in spite of all of the circumstances that are out there, and it's forced us to think outside the box, be innovative. That's always a good thing. So here's to a healthy and happy and more robust ridership in 2022. So thank you so much, everybody. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn if somebody has one.
A motion by Director Carey and a second by Director Groven.
Thank you very much. Well, as I said, everybody have a healthy and happy and safe New Year. And our next meeting is February 17th at 2020, beginning at 9 o'clock in the morning. And if there's no further business before the Regional Transportation Authority of Northeastern Illinois, all those in favor of adjourning say aye.
Aye.
Or hitting the leave button. And any opposed? If not, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much.
Happy holidays.
Thank you all.
Happy holidays, everybody. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.